found out today on Twitter it's 20 years since Buffy premiered in America. That's Buffy the Vampire Slayer for people who don't know. Over in the UK it's another year and a half until we celebrate that. We didn't get it until the 30th of December 1998 and I was 18 years old. Oh my gosh, I feel old all of a sudden. Anyway, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a teenage program that dealt with all the big issues of life, the universe and everything, while throwing in a healthy dose of demons and vampires and monsters for Buffy the Slayer to vanquish every week. It was groundbreaking for its time alongside the X-Files. It changed the way people looked at fantasy, sci-fi and horror genres, and it made television stand up, reassess what it was doing and bring itself up a level in production values, in writing values and in acting levels. With these two shows I think we wouldn't have things like Battlestar Galactica in 2005, I think, the new Doctor Who series, also 2005. A lot of shows that we have strong women in now, we wouldn't have, I don't think we would have had it not been for Dana Scully in the X-Files and Buffy Summers in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. These shows prove that women could be strong, individual, on their own, but they were also real. They had flaws. They were human. They weren't just pretty little things to be rescued. They had their own ideas on how to live their lives, and I really like that for the show. Like most good TV series of the 90s, it ended up with a whole pile of books from the show and graphic novels, and I just want to share a few of them with you, particularly if you've not experienced or come across any of these, so you've got some idea of what to keep an eye out for in your libraries and charity shops, because a lot of these are now discontinued and you can't get hold of them. So first up, some of the graphic novels, the original graphic novels that came out. These are all published by Titan Books and they follow extra stories of Buffy's life and other characters in the show. The first one is the origin, chronologically wise. I don't think it was the first published, but I'd have to check that up. And it's what the Buffy the Vampire Slayer film should have been according to Joss Whedon. This is more what he wanted, and it retells that film in comic book form, expanding on the characters, giving a lot more insight into Buffy and Pike and her original Watcher, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, so apologies there. And it's told in very traditional comic book form, bright colours, easy to get font. And each part is broken up with an original cover art from the comic itself. Then things get a little bit dark in Buffy's life. Obviously she's burnt down her first school with a whole pile of vampires inside. A lot of her friends, well, a lot of her schoolmates have died. At that point she obviously hasn't got many friends because I think she's crazy. So she ends up legging it off to Las Vegas to try and escape it all, and comes back to talk to her family about it. And this kind of happens. This is Slayer Interrupted, which deals with that time between the film and the beginning of the TV show. This is how Buffy comes to terms with who she is, what she is, and also what's happening in her family life. For those of you that know the show, you know Buffy, her parents are divorced in the show. Dad's not really around anymore, and a lot of that stuff is dealt with in this issue. If you can find a copy of Willow and Tara, this has stories written by Amber Benson, who plays Tara. It's an incredibly hard copy to find. Mine's an extra library copy that I found on eBay, and it wasn't expensive, but it wasn't cheap either for a graphic novel. But this is a lovely collection of stories that tell more of Willow and Tara's relationship. They are one of the best relationships we have on television, of a loving couple, and I really like them. Then there was spin-off comics that were done. This is Tales of the Slayer. It's a collection of short stories looking at earlier versions of the Slayer, coming from the very first Slayer at the beginning to quite a few badass 18th century girls, and we even have Frey from the far future in here, which is kind of cool. There is another one called Tales of the Vampires, which I haven't got, but I read it in the library, and that was really good as well, dealing with some of the big vampires, obviously Dracula, but also Spike and Angelaeus from the series. Obviously, one of the most famous episodes that Buffy the Vampire Slayer ever did was their musical one, Once More with Feeling. I actually do have the songbook. It's downstairs with all the other musical books, which I was going to bring up with me, but I completely forgot to do so. But this is the soundtrack of that episode. This is how most musical episodes are now based against. So when we've got the Supergirl musical episode coming up shortly, this is what it will be based against. I know at the time Xena, the warrior princess, did a musical episode before Buffy. I'm sure it's either before or around about the same time, and that also showed very clearly how you do a proper musical episode, one that develops your characters and your plot. So this soundtrack, which you can still get, you can still get all the soundtracks from the Buffy episodes, but this is on Prime at the moment on Amazon. It's really worth listening to. I mean, if you're not a fan of musicals, this is actually really catchy. Some really good songs in this, particularly Under Your Spell, which is a lovely love song between Tara and Willow. And I think my other favourite one here is Rest in Peace, which is a nice punky rock ballad that Spike ends up singing to Buffy, and is full of great humour. So some good books. We've got the Tales of the Slayer collection. We've got issues 1 to 3 here, which are short stories looking at various Slayers throughout history. Obviously encountering the original Slayer. I think there's a story involving Buffy in here. I don't think there's one of Frey in here, but certainly a lot of Slayers that come from a variety of backgrounds, cultures and countries, and all the issues that they have to deal with, as well as being a vampire slayer. These are some of my favourite Buffy the Vampire Slayer books. The Dark Willow series, actually it's Wicked Willow series, sorry. This is a trilogy, but I've only got book 1 and 2, which is so frustrating. These are set between 2 episodes in season 6, where Willow has turned to the dark side and has lost complete control of who she is and what's important to her. And this deals a lot with her turmoil, her emotional state of mind, and some of the issues that everybody's going through at the time, trying to figure out how to best to help Willow, how to get through to her, how to bring her back. They are quite moving, particularly the second one. There's some issues in there that actually, if you know these characters really well, they get to you a little bit. They were very cleverly written, really got into the heads of the characters, and I really enjoyed these. This is a nice little tome. This is Chosen, which is the collection of the overarching plot from season 7, which is the final season of the TV show. It's all the highlights from most of the episodes in the season that deal with the main plot of Buffy's path in life as a Slayer. It's also got some nice pickies in the middle from the season. My husband recently read this one and quite enjoyed it. It's Spike and Drew and Pretty Maids All in a Row, which is, as you can tell, a Spike and Drew story. So it follows these vampires through parts of their life and the mischief that they get up to, and really these guys are brilliant. I love it. Drusilla being completely absolutely off the wall, and Spike being her loving protector. I think they are really good characters that just work really well together. What's nice about the books is they can delve into some of the other characters, because obviously the show is called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so it's her focus, but we have books that focus on Oz. This is Oz Into the Wild by Christopher Golden. Focuses on his struggles as a vampire and his love for Willow. There's Control Issues, which is a Dawn and Buffy story written by Scott and Denise Siennan, possibly how you pronounce it. It's nice because Dawn generally gets looked down upon by a lot of people. They didn't like her, they find her a whiny little brat. Let's face it, for you 15-year-old kid who's just been dropped into this world and has got no idea what's going on, there's a lot Dawn has to deal with, and I think you'd be a whiny little brat trying to cope with it as well. But this is nice because it develops that sisterly relationship that Buffy and Dawn have. Then there's this one. These are Actors, which focuses on Willow and Spike a lot more and their kooky relationship, and I really like Willow. I think she's probably one of my favourite characters from the show. I identified with her a lot. And you know, she's the outsider who's just trying to get on with life and enjoy the things that she enjoys, and I really like her. This is Slayer Slang by Michael Adams, and it's a detailed look at the language used in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. A lot of people, when they mention Buffy, will have particular phrases or sayings that are directly from Buffy. A bit like Clueless from a little earlier, that set up its own lingo. Buffy's got its own terminology, and this looks at some of the origins of it and the history. So it's kind of cool. Obviously there's also episode guides. I think they're downstairs. They're called the Watcher Guides. And there's a monster guide as well, which gives you a blow-by-blow account of all the monsters that Buffy's had to deal with over several seasons. I don't think it's complete because it came out before the show had finished airing. So there is that little detail. There is as well a comic series currently running. I've just started season 11 of it. So there are a few that you can get your hands on now in graphic novel form. They've been collected together. It does get a little bit weird. It might not be for everyone's taste, but the gang are effectively all there. They deal with some big issues as always. Buffy has never been afraid to tackle the issues going on in the world. And the characters are still growing, they're still developing. They are now adults in a very different world from what they grew up in from the events from the end of season 7. So there's some of the highlights of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like I say, probably one of the major shows of the 90s that changed the way that we look at television. That and X-Files certainly raised the profile of independent, strong female characters who were allowed to be human. They weren't just superhuman, they were human people. They had their flaws, they had their emotions, but they didn't let themselves be defined by being a woman. Buffy she's a vampire slayer. She's also a teenager with everything that entails. She still needs to have friends, but she has learnt that she can depend on herself, and that's okay. Dana Scully from the X-Files showed that women could be highly intelligent and yet still look absolutely fabulous, and yet still be allowed to have those emotional moments. And it didn't make her weak, it just made her a real person. I think without Buffy the Vampire Slayer and X-Files, we would not have a lot of female characters that we have today. I certainly don't think without Buffy we wouldn't have mainstream genre shows on the telly like Game of Thrones. Buffy was the first of its kind to do the comedy, horror, teenage aspect that was actually adored by a wide range of people. And we owe it an awful lot. So in celebration, tonight I will be watching an episode of Buffy with my husband. I'm not sure if I want to go with the traditional Once More with Feeling, but he doesn't like musicals, so we might go for the absolute scary one that I really haven't watched since I first saw it, and that would be Hush, because it terrifies the living daylights out of me. But there we go. So we might enjoy ourselves with a classic episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Thank you for watching. Keep slaying. Bye.